Everything But Politics podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Everything But Politics podcast. Today we have an absolute sicko of a guest, just total beast. Happy to welcome Aaron Jeffery. Aaron, thanks for coming on the podcast, bro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure. And Aaron, I guess before we kind of get into it and kind of learn more about you and your career, why don't you give our listeners a little rundown on yourself and like some more background on you and your career?
In just my MMA career, you mean?
Yeah, whatever. Just whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, I'm a pro MMA fighter. I'm currently fighting in Bellator. I'm ranked number 6 in the middleweight division. My record is 13-4. I'm based out of Niagara Falls, Canada. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had this for a long time. I've been doing it for probably about 15 years now.
Well, let's go. I mean, let me ask you this. Let's go back like 15 years ago. How does one get into it? I feel like a lot of MMA fighters, it starts off with wrestling, yes, and then it leads more towards other
No,
arenas.
not for me. Not for me. It's less common in Canada. Like in the States, it's definitely popular for wrestlers to turn to MMA. Wrestling is not really as big here. For me, it was just like watching UFC on TV when I was younger, becoming a fan, and then like finding a martial arts gym. And for me, it was jiu-jitsu and kickboxing.
Sure.
Awesome. So you've been training for 15 years, I guess, straight. What does like your training look like nowadays?
I'm pretty much twice a day, Monday through Friday. Once Saturday, and then Sundays I rest. It obviously varies. Like every week is not like perfectly consistent. But it's pretty much all mat time. I don't really do like strength and conditioning or running or any of that stuff. It's just like martial arts stuff, whether it's jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling. Yeah, pretty much that, like twice a day most days.
You said
What
twice a day. How many hours per day, and how early are you getting up to do that?
It varies. Most days we have practice at 11 a.m. So I'm not up super early, maybe like 8 a.m.
Okay.
But yeah, we're in there usually at 11 a.m. for about 2 hours. And then maybe like another hour and a half, maybe 2 hours again in the evening.
But Aaron, so something it'd be great if you could clarify for our listeners. So for those who maybe don't know the difference between Bellator and the UFC, can you kind of walk them through the differences?
Yeah, it's like it would be almost like comparing like the NFL to the CFL, or I don't know, like my girlfriend said Walmart to Zellers. It's just a different league. It's like the exact same sport, the exact same rule set, just different ownership, different fighters. It's competition almost.
Is Bellator also worldwide, or it's North America?
Yeah. Nope, Bellator's worldwide. They just did a show on the weekend in France. They actually do a lot more shows in Europe than the UFC does. I would say they go to Ireland, France, England. They're over there fairly often, actually. Italy.
So how often are you traveling then? I mean, obviously based in Niagara Falls, you all around the place, or what's the deal there?
I train in Florida for a few months out of the year. Like in the last year, I've been in Florida for maybe like 4 months. I go down there for like the first half of my camp usually. And then wherever my fights are, I got to travel for that. I haven't fought in Europe yet, mostly in the States. Last year, where did I fight last year? Fought once in Philadelphia. I fought once in Connecticut. And I fought once in South Dakota. And my next fight is going to be again in South Dakota.
Was your fight in March also in South Dakota?
Where was that fight? No, that was in California, actually. Forgot about that one.
And when is the next fight?
The next one is I can't really say. It's in the summer at
Okay,
some point.
great.
The news like Bellator hasn't released anything, so I don't know like exactly how much I'm supposed to say, but it'll be this summer.
Okay, sick. And so at what weight class are you currently fighting in? And
Middleweight.
how does middleweight? And in terms of weight classes, how does it work in terms of like people in that weight class and in terms of leaving that weight class? Is it easy change if you wanted to go to lightweight or bantamweight?
Um, I don't know actually because I've never really done it. I've heard in the UFC it can be difficult. Sometimes they don't like you doing it. It depends on the weight classes too. Like some promotions will have different matchmakers for different weight classes. So I know in the UFC, I think like the welterweight is like the cutoff. So if you're going to go from middleweight to welterweight, it would be a different matchmaker. So they don't really want you doing it often. I think they're going to tell you like if you're going to make the switch, it's got to be permanent. You can't be like jumping weight classes all the time. But yeah, again, I've never done it, so I don't really know how they go about it.
So when people do jump weight classes, obviously you said you haven't done it, but have you ever dealt with like cutting weight or trying to get down like a significant amount?
I used to cut down to the weight class below me like early in my career. Yeah, it's not fun. It sucks. A lot of guys cut tons of weight. I don't cut that much weight anymore since I moved up a weight class. I still cut like maybe 15 pounds, but that's like very reasonable compared to what a lot of guys will do.
So what is your diet looking like with that being said?
During the weight cut, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, well, like a lot of guys will have to lose like a bunch of weight leading up to like fight week. Like they'll have to cut their calories and like restrict their food a bunch to lose some weight before fight week. But for me, it's pretty much just like the water cut we call it. So my diet's like pretty consistent year round, and then on fight week, I pretty much cut out my carbs and my salt, and that takes a lot of water weight off you. And then I do like a little sweat in like the sauna or like sweatsuit or whatever to lose a few
Yeah.
more pounds.
Nice.
After you do the weigh-in, do you then drink water and carbs, or are you not allowed to do that before the fight?
No, you got to do that. Yeah, because
Okay,
you're pretty dehydrated at weigh-in. So yeah, you got to refuel.
gotcha.
So, Aaron, something we've been fortunate enough to talk to some athletes, and a lot of like it always comes back to a moment when they were growing up that a sacrifice they had to make to like kind of take it to the next level. When were you faced with that? And at what age did you kind of realize that you want to do this at a professional level?
Um, well, I've been doing it like MMA is weird because you can do it at the professional level and still be like pretty shitty at the sport. Like it doesn't take much to go pro. You just got to find a promotion that's gonna like give you a pro contract and like pay you. It could be fucking $50 that they're gonna pay you, and you're considered a professional athlete because you're getting paid. So there's like very low level pros in MMA and like regional shows that have guys that are like making their pro debut, and there's a lot of guys you'll see their record is like 0-4, and they're still professional fighters, and they're like really not very good. But yeah, I've been fighting pro for I don't know, I think like 7 or 8 years now. Um, but like the time that I realized like I could actually potentially make some money off it was when I got my first Contender Series contract in 2019.
And is fighting your sole job, or do you do anything else, or do you train, or how do you? What else do you do?
It's my sole job now. Like I'm full-time fighting.
Nice.
Sick.
So I guess going back to like cutting and gaining weight, like right now, I'm assuming you're maintaining your weight. What is your typical, I guess, diet? Like, what do you eat on a daily basis?
Nothing crazy. Like I mean, if you saw what I was eating, it looks like a regular person's diet, probably like more calories for sure. Like I'm eating 4 to 5 thousand calories a day often,
Okay.
but I don't know. Like I eat a lot of bread, like whole grain bread. I eat a lot of eggs, veggies, oatmeal, fruit, nuts, chicken, fish, meat, rice. Not like a ton of like processed stuff, but I'll enjoy like a bowl of cereal here and there, or like granola bars, stuff like that. But yeah, it's not. If you saw what I was eating, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, this guy's an athlete. He's on a crazy diet."
Yeah, and I feel like based like what Merrick said, we've spoken to some athletes, and it seems like it's not like their diet's much crazier than anyone else's. They just train a lot harder.
Yeah, and they probably just eat more because they're training hard all the time, so you got to fuel yourself. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there's no like magical diet that athletes are following.
Yeah.
Wait, so as your summer fight is coming near as we approach it, will anything change within your diet, or you'll pretty much just stay the same and continue to sweat it out?
Pretty much stay the same, man. Like I said, my diet's fairly consistent year round. I don't cut a ton of weight, so I don't need to like try and lose a bunch of fat before the fight or anything. So no, I'll be pretty consistent. Like maybe I'll have less like quote unquote cheat meals. Like I went to a wedding a couple of weeks ago and like ate a ton of food there. Maybe I'll do that less often, but otherwise pretty consistent.
Nice.
Yeah, and Aaron, you got 13 wins and 9 of them by knockouts or TKO. I mean, like, it's got to feel like pretty powerful to knock someone out. Can you kind of describe that feeling?
Yeah, man, it's very difficult to put into words. I mean, I think that's the reason why we as fighters are fighters is like chasing that feeling, whether it's like a knockout or submission or even just like a decision win, like to get your hand raised at the end is yeah, that's the reason why we do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But on the contrary, what does it feel like to be submitted or knocked out? It can't be close to as fun.
The worst fucking feeling in the world. Again, I can't put it into words, but I don't know if anything in life gets much worse than that.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
And what's like the recovery process after, say, taking a beating like that? If you do lose, even if you win, I'm sure there's some aches and pains the next day.
Yeah, for sure. It depends. Like sometimes after a fight, you don't have any injuries, but you're just like worn down and you're like sore everywhere, and you just kind of chill. Like maybe take a week off and rest and whatever. Sometimes obviously there's like injuries, even like cuts and stuff. Maybe you get like a bad cut and you're forced to take some time off because of that. But yeah, it's gonna vary for sure depending on how the fight goes.
And you've been doing it for almost 15 years. How many, broken bones or, injuries have you had to, deal with in your career?
Um, my fair share of like small things, nothing like really crazy. I messed up my knee pretty bad one time, maybe like 5 6 years ago. And I was just in no surgery. I was in like a brace for like 8 weeks or something. Broke my nose a few times, like some sprained ligaments, like partially torn ligaments, that kind of thing. But no surgeries, like nothing really crazy.
That's good.
So Aaron, one of the crazy things about like the fighting world is that it's literally so universal. Like people from all over the world fight, and like there's some like in the UFC, for example, some of the best fighters aren't here from North America. How does the fighting landscape differ from like Canada, United States to the rest of the world?
Um, there's maybe like different styles, I guess. Like, you guys like watch hockey?
Yeah.
Hockey
Yeah.
at all? You know, like the Russians have like a different style kind of from the North Americans. Like North Americans are known for being like a little bit more rough and like maybe more athletic and tough and strong and explosive and shit. And the Russians are usually like a little bit slicker. Um, some of that in fighting, I guess. Like so there's some Russian guys that are like very slick and they're not like the most physical guys. And then I'd say a lot of North American guys, like wrestlers and shit specifically, are like the super athletes and they're like super jacked and powerful and stuff. So you get a bit of that, but I think like what works in fighting, it works or it doesn't work. So I mean, there can only be like so much variation.
And in terms of your game, what do you consider to be your greatest strength?
Probably like being able to do everything. I'm like kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. Like I never like started and specialized in one martial art. I've always done them all. So I'm a mixed martial arts fighter before I'm like a boxer or a wrestler. So I think I'm decent everywhere, which is a good skill set to have.
Yeah.
Nice.
So outside of professional MMA, have you been in any street fights or like, just fights that you had to, defend yourself?
I've been in a couple, yeah. I don't do that anymore. It's been a long time, but yeah, back in my university days, I got in a couple.
Where'd you go to university at?
Brock University in St. Catharines.
Okay, and did you fight there, or did you on the side, not for the university?
No, not for the university, but at the university, maybe on campus or something like that.
So I guess going back to hockey, I'm assuming you're a Leafs fan. With them out of it, who you rooting for the rest of the way down?
No, I don't give a shit about hockey, man. Like I didn't watch any of the Leafs games. I think it would be cool if they won. Like I know a lot of people that are big Leafs fans. Like they're very popular here. I'm like an hour from Toronto, and
Mhm.
yeah, like everyone loves the Leafs around here. But no, I don't really care much. The Ducks were always my team just because of the movies growing up. I don't even know who's in the playoffs now.
Who is it? It's got the star. I think it's the Stars versus the Knights on the West,
Yep,
and the East is the Hurricanes versus
Florida.
Florida. So
I'll say I'm rooting for Florida then because I like to go to Florida. So
where in Florida do you come down to?
um, near Deerfield Beach.
I live here in Boca Raton, so
Oh no way! Yeah.
I know
Do you know
exactly where you're at.
Boynton Beach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I stay, and then the gym is in Deerfield.
Oh, right
Oh,
on.
Small
yeah, that's
world.
sick.
And do
Totally.
you do your training in Florida like closer to a fight or earlier on in the fight before the fight?
A little bit earlier. I like to go down there like at the beginning of my camp. There's a lot of like super high level guys there, so I go down and like get some really hard rounds and like scrap and get beat up, and then I come back here and kind of tone it down a little bit and like just sharpen it up and stay healthy before the fight.
And
Nice.
how much of your training is like techniques in like practicing certain skills compared to just fighting other people?
There's a good mix of it both. Like a lot of sessions would be like a technique portion at the beginning and then like some live work at the end. Depends where you are in camp too. Like if it's 2 weeks out from the fight, maybe you're cutting back on like the actual fighting in the gym. Um, yeah, but there's a good mix of both.
Gotcha.
Aaron, something I'm curious about, like in the fighting world. So I feel that when you first start off, it's almost like one of the most important times in your career, getting like those first few matches or wins under your belt. Because say you start off 0-5, like it's hard to like build up from that or for people to take you seriously. Is that true, or how does that work?
Yeah, my roommates here just gave me the finger. But yeah, it's for sure it's true, man. My roommate he started off 0-2, and now he's 4-2 with 4 finishes in a row. Is that right? 4 finishes, yeah. Yeah, so dude, a lot of guys would be fucking 0-2 and they might just quit or like lose confidence completely or whatever. And he built his way back and now he's 4-2 and he's like probably one of the top prospects in the country. So yeah, man, it's important. Like picking fights. I mean, guys hate to admit it, but I mean, you got to pick fights smart, especially early in your career. You can't be fighting like high level guys straight out of the gate because then again, maybe you're 0-2 or even you're like 5-5, and to make it to like UFC or Bellator or whatever with a record like that is next to impossible. So
Yeah.
So say you are into that position. If someone listening is in that position, like what route can they take to kind of, I guess, elevate their career?
get a good manager and fight a lot of shitty guys and build your record back up. Like take smart fights and start beating some people up.
Well, when you are at that point and you've 10 fights in, you're 5-5, whatever. how many fights should you be taking a year to the point where you're not like taking a physical toll on yourself?
Um, I don't know, man. Depends how the fights go, I guess, too, right?
Yeah.
If you're getting real good matchups and you're just like beating guys in the first round every time, maybe you can take 4 or 5 fights a year. If you're having like some wars in there, then maybe you're only taking 1 or 2 or 3.
How is, I guess, your training with like having a roommate who's also, in the MMA world? Like when you were, I guess, say living by yourself, were you less motivated or is it kind of the same?
Um, uh, it's kind of. I mean, I'm always motivated. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to the gym no matter what. It's kind of cool to have someone else that does it. Like we talk about what happened at practice or the fights on the weekend or our teammates are fighting or whatever. So that's cool that we get to talk about it more, I guess. And I don't know, it's probably useful. I bet it's good for like our skill set and our mentality and shit for sure to be like thinking and talking about it more often.
In
Nice.
Are all the people you train with professional MMA fighters?
Um, no, there's some amateurs on the team. Um, every once in a while, I'll hop in like a rec class at the gym with just like guys that are just jujitsu guys, and they just do it kind of for fun as like a hobby. Every once in a while, I'll hop in and roll with those guys.
And
Nice.
what is like the team entail? Are those just people you train with?
Yeah, I guess like I don't know. We call it like there's a jujitsu team at the gym, like people that just compete in jujitsu. There's a
Mm.
Muay Thai team of like amateur Muay Thai fighters, and then there's like the fight team, I guess, of like the MMA fighters, the pros and the amateur MMA fighters.
Okay, so it's
So,
kind of just like based in groups and based on what you do.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
and Aaron, at this point in your career, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Um, Probably being ranked in the top 10 in Bellator.
Nice. And how
Yeah.
many how many weight classes are there?
Uh, Good question. In Bellator,
Yeah.
35, 45, 55, 70, 85, 205 heavyweights, 7 men's weight classes, maybe
And
8, maybe
each
there's 25 too. Yeah, 7 or
and
8.
each have what, anywhere from like 100 to 250 people?
No, it'd be a lot smaller for Bellator. I think UFC probably ranges from like 40 to 80 people per weight class, maybe. Bellator's probably depends on the weight class, but I would guess it's more like 20 or 30.
And are most of the fighters in Bellator, are they have their eyes set on UFC, or most of them are pretty content with being in Bellator?
Probably depends where you're at in your career. Um, Depends what they're paying you too, right? Like Bellator's paying some guys like a lot of big money. Some guys went from UFC to Bellator. Some guys went from Bellator to the UFC. There's some really young guys fighting in Bellator that are still like 20 years old. There's some older guys. So it probably varies from person to person.
So why do you think UFC is not like the mainstream fighting organization? Like that's the one everyone like kind of refers to.
Uh I don't know, man. There's probably a lot of reasons. I think they were like pretty much the first to get into it. I think that's a big part of it. Now they kind of have like a monopoly over the sport. Like they have the most money, the most marketing, they have the most
Yeah,
fighters. It's like really hard to take that over, right? Like it's why is like Walmart the biggest store? I don't
Yeah.
know,
100%.
but they probably will be forever now.
Yeah.
So like Merrick said, like MMA continues to grow and grow and grow. Like what are your thoughts on its growth and popularity, I guess, in the last couple of years, and where do you kind of see it going in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, it's good. It's good for all of us. Obviously, like the more eyes that are on the sport, the more the fighters get paid, which is what we want. Um, I feel like there is probably a ceiling on it. Maybe that's like negative, but I don't think MMA will ever be as mainstream as hockey or football just because it's like brutal and you're not gonna have like probably your mom and your grandma watching the fights with you on the weekend. Like it's like mostly a young man's thing, I would say. So I think there's probably some kind of ceiling on how popular it gets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, it's definitely not the kind of thing you're gonna watch with grandma. So
Yeah.
I get that. But Aaron, I guess before we kind of wrap this up, would love to ask you some like rapid fire questions real quick before we let you go.
Sure.
All right, what's your dream venue to fight in?
Dream venue. The Thorold Community Center. Because it's
Okay.
2 minutes from my house. I could walk over.
And after you've been training hard for a long month's time, after the fight, what's your go-to post-fight meal?
Beer and pizza.
Alright.
Okay. When you were growing up, who was your like role model? Who did you look up to?
My big brother,
How about in the fighting world?
Anderson Silva.
Who
Great
in
answer.
I think based off that answer, I know what you're gonna say. Who's the GOAT of MMA?
Anderson Silva.
And who would be the best up and coming fighter currently that maybe isn't getting the credit they deserve?
My roommate, Kevin Popovic.
Okay, shout out Kevin. And last one, which country currently is producing the best talent?
Probably between the U.S. and Russia. One of those two.
Okay. Very cool. Well, hey, it's been a lot of fun, man. We appreciate you
Thanks,
coming
boys.
on, taking time out of your day,
No
and
problem.
wishing you the best of luck with your upcoming fights and everything else you got going on.
Thank you, guys.
Aaron, where could
Appreciate it, man.
our listeners though find you on social media?
Everywhere at AAJ MMA.
Great. All right,
Okay.
guys. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right. See you. Peace.
Everybody.